Good evening. Welcome to the Irish NFL show, our week 14 recap brought to you by our partner QuinBet. Just the three of us this week to, I suppose, go through what was again another action-packed Sunday of action. Brian O'Leary, Kieran Boyle, and Noel Dowling joins me to, over the course of the next 60 minutes, get stuck into some storylines that came out yesterday. Teams going over, airplanes going over stadiums, Bears finding new ways to lose games, and but there was other bigger and better games yesterday, including the one in which we went and watched in Buskers on the Ball. The Jets watch party, official Jets watch party, was yesterday evening. Really enjoyable night, great crowd at it. It was great to see so many NFL fans in town despite the loss for the Jets. Dolphins come out on top in overtime, but it was an exciting and entertaining evening, which we'll come to when we get into this Dolphins run towards the playoffs. But we'll kick off in SoFi, and Kieran, we spoke about it last night, so I'll go to you first now, if you don't mind. It's not often you score 42 points and yet you come out the wrong side of a result, but that's what happened to the Bills yesterday. Josh Allen did his utmost to rally this team to get them back. I suppose on the show on Thursday, we did feel this was a precarious game in the sense of the Rams are always worthy of putting in a performance offensively, and Matthew Stafford and Cup, and they've got all the players, various Puka, that can do a number on any team on the right day, and that's pretty much what happened yesterday. They couldn't manage this Rams offense. We've seen it earlier on in the season, like for example when they went into Baltimore on a Sunday Night Football and they put a beat down on them. Like, defensively, for me, this is a big concern for this Bills team. Okay, they've won the division, they're going to the playoffs, but is it going to be this defense that brings them up short come playoff time? Because you can't be giving up 40 odd points and expecting to come out the right side of a result, even though they nearly did.
Well, the defense, I think I have a little bit more faith in the defense. I mean, they've been pretty solid all season. It's not every day you come up against absolute legends like Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, who were absolutely out of their minds last night. You know, I'd said last week that if the Rams were going to have any chance, they would need Kyron Williams to go at least, do his usual 100 yards plus and at least 2 touchdowns. And, he didn't have to shoulder much of the heavy load. I mean, some of the catches that Puka made, Cooper Kupp, despite that holding call late at the end, which I'm adamant still that was a holding call. But, they went out to a fast start. They put the Bills on the back heel, and they just about held on another couple of minutes in that game, and who knows what would have happened. But, it's very similar to the run they went on last year. But I'm going to be pretty adamant on the fact that the Rams, as the Rams are getting all these players back healthy, they are just getting better and better every week. And as long as they can keep Kupp and Nacua on the field, now that we all know that they're injury prone, but if they can keep those two on the field, get 100 plus from Kyron Williams, get a little bit from Blake Corm, just as a second running back. But it was just a phenomenal game. I mean, it's what we all wanted. It's what we all love to see. It's a lot of offense. But going back to the earlier point, I wouldn't be too upset by the Bills' defense or too concerned about it. They've been great, especially that secondary all season. So I think it was just coming up against a buzzsaw of a team that was firing on all cylinders and needed everybody to get going. But just, Josh Allen, just an absolute monster what he put up yesterday. And again, like I said, if there was another couple of minutes in that game, who knows what would have happened. It's a great win for the Rams. It really brings them back into the West. After Seattle have almost taken a foothold in that division. So much needed win for the Rams. Bills will be disappointed to lose that one, but great entertainment for everybody, for the neutrals. I mean, the Bills are great copy right now, and Josh Allen probably cemented the MVP, unless anything wild happens. He probably put a lock on the MVP vote for this year.
No, a big week for the Rams. They didn't play too well last weekend in New Orleans, came out the right side of that, teeing up this game. They get out of this one with a victory. You've got the 49ers on Thursday in a big NFC West clash. All of a sudden, you've got a 2-week window where the Rams actually could have gone from a team that many would have thought were on the wrong side of the playoffs, coming with a bit of a run. And then you've got a Bills team it doesn't get any easier for the Bills. They've got the Lions on Sunday, which again is a mouth-watering game for Sunday night, 9:25 Irish time. You've got the Bills going into Detroit, another cracking game. We're really spoiled at the minute. But your thoughts on this one yesterday, because the Rams all of a sudden have come now. Despite the fact they're a couple of games back on the Seahawks, it's not against the Rams' possibility. They're 6-4 to make the playoffs with our partner QuinBet. Like, that's, people might see that as short, but some people might see that as a bit of value.
No, I think the Rams are hitting form at the right time. I mean, the Seahawks are looking good. I think the Seahawks are actually just one game ahead. I think Seattle are 8-5 and LA are are 7-6. So, and they have everything to play for. It's all in their own hands. These remaining games, they have the 49ers, who I think I wouldn't be getting too involved or too happy about the win against the Bears last night. I still think they could be got at by teams. They have the Jets, who at this stage the season is officially over. So that's a team they could get a win on. Then they have the Cardinals and the Seahawks on the final game. So for the Rams, if they can keep up this form, and they can keep up doing what they're doing on offense, what they did on offense yesterday, this is absolutely in their hands to go and take this division now. Seattle are looking really good. I know we'll talk about them later when we get to their game. So that won't be easy for them. But again, the Rams have it in their hands to go and get this. In terms of the Bills, this is such a disappointing result for the Bills in terms of the Chiefs do what the Chiefs done. Again, we'll talk about that, but they get their win. So suddenly now the Bills are a couple of games back on the Chiefs, looking for that number one spot. That gives them the bye week. That is something that would be really nice for a team to get. Still, I wouldn't overly worry. I think Kieran's right. This isn't indicative of that Bills defense. This is just an aberration last night. That was just crazy what happened on both defenses to a point. I think this Bills offense showed exactly what they were last night. I agree with Kieran again. MVP for Josh Allen for me. I think there's going to be no stopping him. He's going to keep going. And the Lions game will be a massive game, though. It will be interesting to see how they step up again from such a crazy game. Can they kind of get that defense started again? Because this Lions offense isn't an offense you want your defense going in not on the right kind of form. But I don't think it'll be anything like last night. And I think the game itself should be a good one. As I say, I just think it's a missed opportunity for the Bills, knowing that the Chiefs were going to go on and get the win later on, that they've dropped a couple of games behind, and you don't see the Chiefs losing too many, so they may have to kind of make do now with second or even third spot with the Steelers on level games there. But again, look, they're going to the playoffs. They have a really good team, and whoever gets them will have a tough time trying to stop them.
Kieran, we rarely circle back to Thursday night, and we rarely look too far ahead to the weekend because obviously we've got our preview show on Thursday, but the Lions come out the right side of a big NFC North clash on Thursday night, win by the field goal. Packers gave them everything to think about. They're going to have 10 days essentially now, but like a mini boys, they like to call it, and they're going to win against this Bills team. Does that make is a huge factor, the fact that they can get themselves ready for a game in which the Bills then have to come back over from the West Coast on a short week, essentially coming up to this game? Do you think it's a factor?
Yeah, any kind of rest at this stage of the season is vital. I mean, days are like they're a valuable commodity. Any kind of rest you can get. Everyone's injured, no matter what players say. I mean, we're not getting a full picture from injury reports. Everybody's hurt in some way. So any extra day or two, especially for that banged up Lions defense, any kind of extra rest is going to be huge. But that's that's going to be a great clash. That's going to be really, really. I mean, I'm already looking forward to that one.
Yeah. I'll stick with you, Kieran, here. Obviously, I had to take time today to watch the highlights of this one because obviously last night we were in Buskers on the ball at the Jets watch party, and I said to Noel, how are you supposed to evaluate a game such as the Vikings and the Falcons are really taking time out tomorrow to go through it? Because for early on, it looked like the Falcons, I wouldn't say necessarily the Falcons were doing a number on the Vikings, but they were well within the game. They seemed to be playing well offensively. Bijan Robinson was getting involved. And then in the second half, we've seen Sam Darnold come back to Sam Darnold, which we were seeing early on in the season when he was slinging it around and everything was coming off. And obviously he had a bit of a slump midway through the season. But yeah, here we are again, another victory for this Vikings team. They're playing the Bears next week on Monday Night Football. With the Bears form at the moment, you'd argue it looks like a very winnable game for this Viking side. And yet they're still one game out. And you're looking at the schedule. They've got to go into Detroit, and they play each other tough earlier on in the season. Like, for all the accolades the Lions are getting, there is a scenario where the Vikings beat them at the end of the season, could leapfrog them into that one seed.
Yeah, and Vikings are handling all the business. They're doing exactly what they need to do. And it was a pretty much a back and forth game early on. Falcons kind of reverted to what they've been, mixed up the run game with the passing game. Cousins didn't look too bad, and then boom, I'm sorry, got some audio issues here. Give me one sec. Yeah, the other Cousins showed up again. We had the Cousins who had thrown the 2 interceptions, and that's what happened. He got into the bad habits, and the Falcons just they couldn't keep up. Darnold had a great game. He went back to what we've seen earlier in the season. He had a little dip especially with that Jags game. And he's back now to doing what he's doing, and which is being a very serviceable quarterback, despite the fact that the Vikings, they haven't given him a new contract for next year, which is going to put a lot of teams on notice. But the Vikings, once they got those kind of interceptions from Cousins, I mean, that's another. I think it's 8 interceptions now and zero passing scores in his last 4 games, and the Falcons are on a 4-game losing streak. So it's not looking great for the Falcons right now and their chances. I was on social media, and a lot of Falcons fans are kind of just throwing their hat in and saying that's another season that's gone. We can't keep up with Tampa. But I've been pretty high on the Falcons early in the season. I thought they'd change and turn a corner, but I think the calls for panics are going to get a little louder now after yesterday. I think Cousins is, I don't want to say he's on borrowed time, but there's definitely going to be calls for panics to come in, especially if the season is lost and the playoffs are gone by the middle of the month, or even towards the end of the month. But Darnold was great yesterday. I mean, he threw the ball all over the place. Aaron Jones at 73 yards, Addison 133 for 3 touchdowns, and of course Justin Jefferson with 2 touchdowns. So it was a really, really impressive performance by Minnesota, just picking apart that Falcons team. Now, despite the fact that Darnold got sacked 5 times, there's such a difference between that Falcons defense. You got the front 4 who harried him and pushed him around, and then the secondary got absolutely smoked, just smoked. They were a non-factor, and the Falcons were able to, the Vikings were able to throw it at will against that Falcons secondary, who were really, really disappointing. But I mean, the Vikings are still there. They're right there behind the Lions. So we will see how things go down the stretch.
Now, a couple of weeks ago, the Falcons had come off 2 victories against the Bucs team, a couple of games ahead in the division, looking like it was all going in the right direction. The Bucs had some really difficult games, held their own in those games against the 49ers and the Chiefs. But over the course of the last month, it's kind of gone back to the form of old. This Bucs team have come at the right time. Another victory yesterday against the Raiders. They're now top of the division. It seems inevitable that this Bucs team will win the division unless the Falcons can turn things around quickly. Probably could say they have a winnable game next Monday night in Vegas against the Raiders. But the Raiders have been playing tough. Is it a scenario now that this division is, I wouldn't say it's gone, but it's like it looks inevitable right now?
Yeah, you just feel like the momentum has swung in the Bucs' favour at the moment. We know that the Falcons have all these really talented players, and Kirk Cousins is brought in to be that kind of experienced veteran who could kind of bring all these players into play and could have that experience to go and win games. And the last few weeks, it just isn't happening. So, you'd be hard-pressed to bet on the Falcons against anybody. They do have the kind of a run-in that on paper, you think, okay, they can win these games. I mean, they have the Raiders, as you say, then the Giants, then they have a tough games at the Commanders, and then they have the Panthers. So they're games that should be winnable on paper. But, as we've talked about, Cousins just doesn't look like the player they paid all that money for. He leads the league in interceptions, 2 more this weekend. As Kieran mentioned, which is up to 15 now. He's just not doing it. He's not doing it for what they've brought him in to do. And this Falcons team is suffering from it then, because when your quarterback is like that, you can only concentrate, or you can only count on those running backs so much, but you need Kirk Cousins to be making plays. And at the moment, when they're needed, he's not making them. And on the flip side, you mentioned the Bucs, they're getting the wins. It's not pretty at times, but they're doing what they need to do. They have that 1-game lead now in the division. And unless the Falcons wake up and really get this offense moving, because I've no faith in this defense anyway. So it does feel like it's on the offense to get these wins. And at the moment, Cousins just doesn't look like the player that they've shelled out all that money to. And it's going to be interesting to see. You will get people calling for Penix, but I don't think they're going to bring a rookie in the heat of battle when there's 4 games to go and it's still all to be played for. I don't think that's something they're going to make a move on. But Cousins does need to get his head in the game fairly lively and start throwing start throwing touchdowns again and cut out these interceptions, because it is game time now. They need to do it. It's there's no more error. I think there's no more space for mistakes, because the Bucs themselves don't have what you consider an overly tough run in. They have winnable games as well. So we're at the stage now. There is no margin for error for these teams, and the Falcons' offense really needs to get going.
Kieran, we're going to come to Sunday Night Football in a minute with the Chiefs beating the Chargers, but it's probably valid we stick with the NFC South because the Bucs have won. The Bucs are going in to play the Chargers on Sunday. I mean, no one touched on it there. The Bucs, they're not blowing teams away. They obviously they won comfortably in the end, but there was parts of that game where they got out early to a lead, and then they allowed the Raiders to come back at them, pulled away again late in the fourth. But they won last week against the Panthers, and they just right now feels like it's the experience of having those players there that are getting these results, because they've been down this road before. made a divisional round last year, put it up to the Lions, and they know what it's like at this stage of the season to go and get these victories. Mike Evans, Baker Mayfield, but I wouldn't say they're playing lights out football. And like, there still is, like, we're talking about a Falcons team that's on a slide, but yet they're only one game out of this division. Can you see it turning, or, like as Noel said, it is winnable games in the stretch for this Falcons team?
There are, but I just think the way that the Bucs are right now, I think, they got Mike Evans back, which was huge, and I think, with that defense, they're able to put teams away. Especially with the Raiders last night. I mean, that's an awful team anyway. But in an error-strewn game, there was turnovers everywhere. I mean, Baker, I think he had 2 or 3 interceptions. I think it was 2. But I definitely favor the Bucs in that division. I think, I talk about it all the time. They have muscle memory, and they just have pedigree at this stage. Whether it was with Brady a couple of years ago, Falcons are just not able to get over the hump. They always find some way to get kind of upset or kind of fall off the wagon kind of towards the end of the business end of the season. But I got a lot of faith in the Bucs.
Sunday Night Football. We were in, as the Buskers on the ball, we spoke to Owen Healy, who does a lot of content for us in terms of our videography, photography, and he's a Chargers fan, and we asked him what his thoughts were in this game, and he said, I could see it being a very close game because that's where Harbaugh will get out his team, but the problem is that they're not experienced enough to go and win these games yet. It is coming, and I felt that way. They're 13-0 down, and look, like, I watched it this morning, and I was thinking, this is a comfortable Chiefs game. And then, lo and behold, the second half starts. Chargers come out sharp, come out hot, and they get an opportunity to cause the shock. They're winning the game for a period of time in the second half, but yet again, the Chiefs navigate a victory, drive down late on, leave 1 second on the clock to kick a winning field goal. Another divisional title for Mahomes, for Andy Reid, for Kelsey. And we spoke last week whether this reality of what we're looking at as three-peat is starting to slowly look like it's a real possibility. And the one seed, as Noel alluded to earlier on, looks like it's wrapped up now on the back of that Bills loss. 2 games to be in the Super Bowl again. It just feels like it's Groundhog Day.
Is that for me, bro?
Yeah, Kieran, I'm sorry. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. It does. It really does. But I think we can all agree it's not the same. It's not the same Chiefs. I mean, they're not entertaining. They're not as dramatic or as flamboyant as they were the last couple of years. They're winning ugly, if that's a phrase. It's almost like having to go to the supermarket. You don't want to go, but you have to. You're just dragging your heels. You're like, oh, do I have to watch them again? And that's almost the way that people feel now. It's not an enjoyable experience because you know what's going to happen. And I don't want to say the hate machine has turned up on the Chiefs, but it's not an easy watch at times. I got to say I was a little reluctant to back the Chargers last night after J.K. Dobbins and even Ladd McConkey went out. That's 2 massive weapons that Herbert was without. And in the first half, it really showed. I mean, they were dropping passes. They just couldn't get any kind of groove going. They couldn't get into motion. Just it was a tough watch in the first half for them. And then, they made a nice little, comeback in the second half, and they definitely put it up to them. But it's just the relentless nature of this Chiefs team. I mean, they're not even playing all that great. No one's putting up any great numbers. I think Kelsey led the team in reception yards yesterday, and he only had 45. So they get Pacheco back. They got Worthy contributing too. Mahomes is doing the bare minimum. I think he had just over 200 yards. I don't know how they're winning. I don't know how it's happening. They're finding all these new ways. The only thing I can think of is they're going to use up all this luck by the time we get to the playoffs, and they're just going to get blown out by a team like the Rams who can just put up 30, 40 points, because this Chiefs team, as it's constructed right now, is barely able to get over 20 points. I wouldn't, if I was a team in the NFL, I mean, yes, you got to be scared of them because of the pedigree, but it's not the same Chiefs. For some unknown reason, defying the odds, they're winning these games. But I have to think that somebody's going to take them down once the business starts in January. So, but again, it's like clockwork. They win. What else can you say? You can't knock them. It's not a great watch at times, but they are consistently winning.
Kieran, you suggested the Rams might beat them. If it's the Rams, it's going to be a Super Bowl. So you're putting your money where your mouth is and saying the Rams are going to run the table, potentially.
It won't be the Bengals anyway.
No, absolutely not. No, I'm just going to put up a great point here by Jared. Or 10-1, in one-score games. They've got a net point plus of 54 for the season. Like, you look at those numbers and you'd say that's a middle of the pack type of team in terms of those numbers. Okay, they're winning records, probably not reflective of a middle team pack, but teams that don't have a great offensive, game plan, essentially not doing very well, not putting up huge points, and yet they're still finding ways to win games because to me it's the mental toughness of this team. Like no matter what the scenario is, whether it's defensively with Spagnuolo, whether it's Andy Reid on a good night offensively, getting them over the line, they get the ball back, and you're watching it and you know what's happening. You've seen this before. You've watched this film before time and time again. And you just knew it was inevitable. But I want to give the Chargers a bit of credit because being down 13-0 at halftime, it would have felt, here we are. Chargers have all come in. A lot of expectations that they would run this team close. They ran them very close. They got the lead, nearly won the game. But to me now, Sunday's a real telling point for this Chargers team. Like, it looks like they're going to go to playoffs, but this team on Sunday against the Bucs this is the weight level they're at now. They should be going in there on Sunday and putting a marker on and beating the Bucs side. There's probably better days ahead for this Chargers team. It's a tough loss. Harbour was very complimentary of his team and how they performed in the aftermath of the game. But yet again, Mahomes and co. Your thoughts as you reflected on this one this morning?
Yeah, look, in terms of the Charger, I think you're right. There are better days to come for this Charger team, and the days that they're going through now are not too bad, considering this is the very start of this new project. But look, when you have a quarterback like Justin Herbert and you have a defense like this Chargers team have, you're always in with a chance to win a game. This defense will rarely give up have a bad game and give up a lot of points, which then leaves an offense with a top class quarterback a chance to go out there and maybe just do enough. I still think they're missing a bit of firepower on offense, which is understandable. As we say, it's year one for this kind of build up. But again, Kieran mentions they're missing Dobbins, they're missing McConkey, and they still go and they push this Chiefs team right to the end. In terms of the Chiefs, look, they're just winners. It's like they don't have to go full throttle. They go in the gear they need to go in, and they just kind of match the opposition as long as they need to. And then in the last 5 minutes or 3 minutes, you know what's going to happen. That man at quarterback is going to do what that man at quarterback does every single week, and he's going to make 2 or 3 plays that makes you sit back and go, yeah, that's him. That's Mahomes. That's the superstar quarterback that we watch week in, week out. I mean, unfortunately for the Chargers, they have a short kickoff, which gives the Chiefs really good field position, and that's something you do not want to do with this quarterback. Now, there's still a possibility he drives the field anyway, but you don't want to be giving him those extra yards starting from 40. So that's something that, it's unlucky for the Chargers to have that happen at that point. But again, you said it, Brian, we've seen this movie week in, week out. It's the same story. It doesn't matter who they're playing. They don't blow them out. They win by a point or 2 or 3. And there's always 2 or 3 Mahomes plays in the last 3 minutes that when you need this quarterback to step up and make plays, he's going to step up and make plays. And I understand where Kieran is coming from. They're going to hit the playoffs and you feel like someone's going to blow them out. And I'm 50-50 on this, because sometimes I just feel like they know what they're doing. They're just playing to the level they need to. And when they hit the playoffs, they'll go running. But then on the other hand, sometimes it's not as easy to slow it down like that and then go full force when you need to. And that could be interesting to see when they hit the playoffs. Can they actually do that? Or is there going to be a case of that they've kind of squeezed their way through so many times that it's not as easy to click into gear when you need to. And that's going to be fascinating to see. But for now, 12-1, number 1 seed in the horizon, all going well for the Chiefs. And again, you'd be a brave man to be betting against this team at this point in time.
Clicking into gear, Pacheco 55 yards, Kelsey 5 receptions, Wardy 5 receptions. Nothing outstanding, nothing eye-dropping or mind-blowing when you look at the numbers this morning, but yet they find a way to get a victory. That concludes the 4th segment of the Irish NFL show, brought to you by QuinnBet. We'll be back shortly, and we'll be talking NFC West as the Seahawks take down the Cardinals. That break was brought to you by Busters on the Ball, where we were last night for the Jets official watch party. A lot busier than what that video showed over the course of the last minutes. We'll jump into our second segment, and we'll go to the West. Kieran, we saw the Seahawks. I went for the Cardinals. Stupid me yet again, thinking that they would find a way to navigate a victory. I went with the home form over the course of the season. They'd only lost one game against the Lions, but last night was telling that they're just not right now at a level in which the Seahawks team are, which is quite admirable for a Seahawks team that, moved on from Pete Carroll in the offseason, bringing in a new head coach. Initially, it looked like after an opening 3-0 record where they played on of great note, they kind of stumbled, lost some games, some weaker teams, and it looked like they were regressing as opposed to moving on and potentially winning this division. But right now, it looks like this team are miles clear of the rest in the sense. I know it's only 2 games, but just the way in which they're playing, the manner of the victories, the manner of how players are playing for them. Geno Smith, defensively, you touched on it on Thursday's preview show. Julian Love, a former Giant. Leonard Williams coming into his own, probably having his best career season so far. And right now, like Green Bay are going in there on Sunday Night Football. Right now, it's hard to argue that you wouldn't fancy the Seahawks to turn over the Packers on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. One of those losses they had early in the season was the Giants. I mean, at this stage, if those two teams met again, it would be a bloodbath. It's America's team. I mean, they're on a 4-game win streak. They are doing just great. I mean, ever since that Niners game where they just ramped up everything, I was like a different team from the first kind of 5 or 6 games of the season. This 4-game winning streak, they're just producing on all ends. I mean, Geno's been great. It's been, I've said it before, having DK back in the field is a huge confidence boost to him. Despite the fact that, even if he doesn't get the ball, just the fact that he's out there is huge for Geno. They were without Walker yesterday, but my God, Charbonnet, he took it upon himself to have himself a day and really put his name on the map in the NFL. Almost 200 yards of offense. He carried that team yesterday. Sprinklings of Smith and Jigba, a little bit of DK, but it was the Zach Charbonnet show yesterday, and the Cardinals had no answer for it. This is the kind of Jekyll and Hyde Kyler that we see so many times in the last couple of years in the NFL. Looks great one week, but other weeks he looks terrible, and this yo-yo performance is kind of continuing this year. 2 bad picks that probably cost them the game. It wasn't overly detrimental when they happened, but just not there for Kyler today. He couldn't. I mean, he's got some great weapons. He didn't really get Harrison involved or McBride. Not great numbers. I mean, I think Harrison only had 49 yards. Michael Wilson had a touchdown. I mean, that's a name that people don't know much about, but it was a tough go for Kyler. But the Seahawks, I mean, they kind of started showing it in that Niners game where they just ran Purdy. They just chased him all over the field, and they did pretty much the same to Kyler yesterday. They didn't give him any time to get comfortable. They harassed him. They just jumped on him from the get-go. Leonard Williams has been great. We talked about him being a former Giant. Julian Love, even people like Byron Murphy, Boye Mafe, just great players that are not that well known in the league. Unheralded players on defense that are really keeping this team motoring along with a foothold in the NFC West now. And I mean, they're playing good ball. I mean, they went on the road, in a place that's, I wouldn't call it a difficult place to go, but it's the Cardinals at home are, they beat the Jets. They're no slouches. So it's a great win on the road for the Seahawks. I really like what they're doing. I'm definitely going to pick them in that Green Bay game, but they keep it moving. They take a foothold in the West, and let's see what happens in the next couple of weeks.
Don't be crediting wins against the Jets, Kieran. Everybody's beating the Jets. No, just an interesting dynamic here. I was looking at the schedule for the Seahawks to finish out the season. 4 games to go. They're going to go. They're going to play at home twice, and then they're going to go on the road for their final 2 games. But the next 2 probably are the real telling games. As I said, Packers on Sunday Night Football. Then they got the Vikings coming into town. They finish on the road with the Bears, and then they got the Rams on the road in SoFi. But by then, potentially, they could have the Division 1, depending on the nature of other results that may or may not go their way. Realistically, what do they need? Do they need 3 wins to get this over the line, or would 2 suffice? I know we're probably speculating on other results, but it looks like one team is only going to come out of this division, so they may have to not necessarily run the table, but they probably do need to get 3 wins here. And 2 of the next games, these 2 next games are huge.
Well, they are. Look, it's going to be hard to see or to see how it goes because, as we've already talked about, the Rams, they're really starting to go now. This offense, when that Rams offense is scoring points, it's going to be hard to stop them. The Packers, you say, is the next game. That's going to be tough. The Vikings, then again, we've talked about the Vikings just somehow quietly going along with that amount of wins they've got. They're going to be a tough game. So it's going to be interesting to see now if this Mike McDonald defense continues the way it's going in the next two games. We'll find out very quickly if it's for real or not. But they have so much balance on their offense, defense. They have so many players on offense. As mentioned by Kieran, Charbonnet steps up there as the backup running back, and he goes out and does that. You look at the wide receivers that they have there. So like they have every chance. Again, it's another team that it's in their own hands to go and do this. But if they do it in this division, with this, we'll say 3 games of the 4 run in, I think we can give them a W for the Bears game already. If they can go and get enough wins out of this, then they'll have earned it, because that's not an easy run in for any team to do. So it's going to be interesting. We'll watch the Rams and see how the Rams kind of chase them there, being that 1 game behind. But I think this McDonald defense is really stepping up at the right time. This offense has the firepower to put teams under pressure. So, I think the favourites to do it, and I think they have the opportunity to do it. But now we're going to find out if this team is for real in that real business end of the season or not.
Kieran, we're going to find out if the Steelers are for real in the next couple of weeks, because they've got the Eagles on the road on Sunday. And they've got Christmas Day game. I don't know if you've got sandwich in between, but they've got Christmas Day game against the Chiefs, who may or may not have the 1 seed wrapped up by then. They won yesterday in the end, comfortably enough. It didn't seem that way for the first half. The Browns were playing within the game, and it looked like the potential could cause a shock. But the Steelers, as you said, there's just this relentless desire to kind of prove themselves yet and time again to their head coach. Came out in the second half, put the game away without Pickens, interesting enough. And a lot of sound bites as to why he didn't play yesterday. He had a bit of an issue. Now they're suggesting he may not play this weekend because of a hamstring injury. So it's hard to know really where his head's at or what is going on there. But he's probably a distraction they don't need. But if any head coach can manage him, we saw on Hard Knocks last week, the new Hard Knocks in season, the AFC North has been covered, and he comes over really frustrated in Cincinnati last week. Tomlin gets hold of him quickly, gets him back on an even keel. That's what they need. But this Sunday is going to be a huge game, but it wasn't as difficult as I thought yesterday. I thought this might have went down late, but it wasn't to be.
Yeah, and the Browns were reaching yesterday. Listen, Jameis is great copy. We love watching Jameis. We love the pregame sound bites that he gives us, and it'd be great if Hard Knocks could have like a spinoff. Just Jameis, just follow him around, get those sound bites. Give some inspirational quotes as he goes along, but. We were rooting for him yesterday, see what he could do, but it's just a game too far. I mean, there's just too much of a gulf in talent, especially on defense. He was doing okay at the start. He had a nice touchdown throw to Judy, but that interception that he threw, in the second half or in the second quarter, that was kind of the beginning of the end for the Browns. They kept pace for a little bit, but not quite to the extent of the Chiefs, but the Steelers just strangle you. That defense just swarms, and it doesn't let you go. And when it's like that, when you got players like T.J. Watt, Patrick Queen, Joey Porter Jr., Mink Fitzpatrick, Beanie Bishop, I mean, these guys are just. I mean, that's a Super Bowl winning defense right there. That's a team. That's a defense. Almost like, I'm not saying that the Ravens of 2000, but you put up 17, 20 points, and you give that defense lead to hold. Who's to say they won't be able to hold it? Now, the offense has woken up in the last couple of weeks. They put 27 points up. They didn't look phenomenal. Freiermuth, Van Jefferson. I mean, these are kind of, wouldn't call them superstars, but serviceable players. But, Wilson, again, not a spectacular game. Only had 158 passing yards, but he was able to get, these other guys that haven't really been involved in the offense that much. So, I don't want to say a pedestrian win in the end for the Steelers, but, a healthy mix of Boswell. He only had two field goals, so he wasn't a determinating factor. But I would definitely keep an eye, like you said earlier, the George Pickens situation. I think there's a lot more going on. I think that ankle reason that he was out yesterday is a smokescreen. I think is a huge distraction. A Kadarius Toney type who was just not the smartest and can be detrimental to the spirit and the vibe in the locker room. I think they're going to muzzle him up and keep him quiet for a while and try and keep him out of the kind of business end unless he can prove to the team that he's going to be beneficial going forward. But I've said it before, penalties in the offseason, coaches do not want anybody that's going to be a wild card or loose cannon. You do not want him out there throwing swings or getting a stupid 15-yard unsportsmanlike penalty. So we'll see what happens with that, because that's a big time skill player that they used on a high draft pick on. So what they do with him over the, we'll find out next week if it's a true injury and if he's on the field or not. But Steelers, again, relentless. They're someone to be feared in the postseason for sure.
No, there's no bye weeks next week. This is it now for the rest of the season. Another tasty one, another tasty affair Sunday, 9:25, clashing with that Bills-Lions game. Eagles hosting the Steelers. And the Eagles ran a hiding to nothing yesterday. The expectation was they'd blow this Panthers team out. The Panthers remained within the spread of a Quinn Better partner, which was 13.5 points as the game started. And if it wasn't for a drop towards the end, they may have even came out on the right side of a victory. Eagles fans relentless in their disappointment on the sideline, despite winning and despite having a great season. Their expectation going into this game was probably that they would blow them out, and probably rightly so, bearing in mind how well they've been playing and how well they played last week with the big win in Baltimore. I always felt like the Panthers would hold their own. They gave a good account of themselves last week against the Chiefs, but yeah, this game was there for them. They had so many opportunities and they just couldn't get it done. And it's a shame because it would have been one of the better storylines of the season. But the Eagles got the victory. But I don't think there's much to write home about this week. But bigger and better days ahead, probably.
No, absolutely. Look, this is just one of those games. I mean, at this point of the season, you're not looking for beauty points. You're looking for wins, and that's what they got. You mentioned that Leggett drop, and I mean, how close that is to just completely changing that game and changing the way we're talking about this Eagles team now. But they're on a good run at the moment. I still think they're a fantastic team, both offense and defense, and they're a team that are going to cause problems in the playoffs. I mean, I think you can't put last night down to just look. It's just one of those things. You take your W, you get out of there, and you go on from next weekend. The Panthers, look, they look better. I mean, they're not winning any of these games, but at least they're pushing teams close now, and you feel like maybe the Bryce Young question isn't answered, and he's not a bust as was kind of being discussed when he was dropped earlier on in the season. Maybe there is a bit of hope in that draft pick again, and the Panthers will take a bit of hope in what's happened the last few weeks, and they'll be looking to bring that into next season. For this Eagles team, look, you put it behind you. There was no win for them yesterday. Either they blow the Panthers out and everyone expects it, or they just beat them and people say they should have done more. I mean, either way, they just need to get that win. They get it, and they move on from here. And again, they're a really good team, and they'll be thereabouts when it comes to this NFC Championship. And yeah, I wouldn't expect too many games like that. I mean, if you can play that pedestrian and still come away with a win in this business end of the season, that's all you're looking for.
No, I'll stick with you because I've touched on it already. We were at the event last night. Huge turnout. Great to see so many different fans at the event. It didn't feel more like a Jets watch party, more than an NFL evening, and it was great to see everyone coming out in December and watch a game that, for large parts, looked like the Jets were going to cause the shock and get out the right side of a victory against their bitter rivals in the AFC East, and yet they get to overtime. Sanders kicks a fantastic field goal. The game goes to overtime, and I think we all kind of felt it was inevitable that the Dolphins were going to march their way down and score a touchdown. For the Jets, it's 2 weeks in a row that they've let leads slip and let games slip that they probably should have won. But I'll jump to the Dolphins first. The Dolphins are hanging in by their coattails. They're 2 games off the Broncos. They're going to go into against the Texans this weekend. Like they've got all the players to run the table with the schedule they got left. But is it too late now at this stage?
Yeah, look, it feels like they've got a bit of a mountain to climb. It'll be, again, you say they have good players there. They have players that can worry teams. This Texans game will be interesting to me because they're 2 teams who I think are loaded with talent, but maybe just aren't quite doing exactly what people expect from them. But again, look, this Dolphins team can go either way for me. I'm not fully sold on them, but then they're on 6 wins, and if they can beat a Texans team that don't look overly strong themselves, then they'll tell themselves they can go on and they can get to the playoffs. I mean, I think one issue they have at the moment, I mean, Achan is obviously a class player and he's always popping up with a touchdown. but they're not really getting the yards on the ground. He had the most rushing yards yesterday with 24, and that's something they need to do. They need to get more of a balance again between this passing attack and this rushing attack, because we've seen this rushing attack in the past, and when it's going full steam, it really does complement the pass, and it does give them that outlet to really worry teams, and they're just not really doing enough at the moment on the ground for me to worry other teams. And I think if they come up against a better team, they could find themselves in trouble. I mean, we mentioned this Jets team there, they're kind of finding ways to lose, a bit like the Bears. They're finding ways to lose games, even when they look like they could go and win it. And I think, again, they did it yesterday. Devontae Adams goes out of bounds when he should be staying in. It leaves a bit too much time on the clock, and the Dolphins drive down. But I think against better teams, they'll need to have more answers than they did yesterday against the Jets. And I think if they get that rushing game going, it just gives them another dimension. But again, they have the players there. When Tua's on form and he has those receivers, and Achan as well, he chips in on the ground and through the air. They can beat teams, but they just don't feel secure to me. And this Texans game will be an interesting one for me, as I say, because I don't trust either team, and I think that one could really go either way.
Kieran, Jared touched on it there. Jared's Jets fan. The inevitability that Dolphins would win the game once they won the toss. You're obviously watching from afar as opposed to us in terms of this game, and it's not too far from you where the game was being played. But your thoughts on the Jets yesterday, because they have played a little bit better over the course of the last week, and Rodgers and Adams have gradually got the connection back that we felt they would get, over the course of the season. But unfortunately, it's too late. And this is a 3-win team now that will go into Jacksonville this weekend, and you're going to be at that game covering it for the show on Sunday. Do you see a scenario where they could finish the season strong? You could argue they are finishing the season strong. They're playing a lot better than which they did earlier in the season, but just can't seem to get the W.
Well, on the offensive side of the ball, they played much better. I mean, Rodgers had his first 300-plus yard game since 2021 when he was with the Packers, and Adams had over 100 yards, and so did Garrett Wilson. I mean, that wasn't really the issue. The issue is the Jets can't stop the run, and the defense is terrible. And they are not able to – they couldn't stop anything yesterday, whether you're passing or whether you're running. And you're right, the inevitability – listen, the Jets had a lead in the fourth quarter again, and they're not able to hold on to it. And as well as everybody else watching that just like the Colts game, just like the Seahawks game, when it comes down to it, they're going to lose. And that's what happened. I mean, that's a team that is not used to winning, doesn't have the it doesn't have the leaders. I'm hesitant to call Rodgers a leader right now. Or Adams, but it's lacking leaders and somebody who can just run around and yell like a middle linebacker and just get everybody to kind of tighten up and get their heads in the game and make sure they hold on to the result. But they're getting a little bit better on offense, but defense is the same situation. It's terrible back there. Not able to make any plays. And I think that I just saw something today. The Jets are the only team. I mean, they haven't made the playoffs since before Victor Cruz ran 99 yards against them in 2011. The Jets haven't made the playoffs in 14 years. They are the only team in the four major sports that haven't made the playoffs. I mean, the Raiders have made the playoffs in that span of time. So it's you can go back to they had LaDainian Tomlinson, Santonio Holmes, all these kind of players, and they were never able to get over the line. So it's the same culture with the Jets. You can put it down to coaching. Look what happened in Carolina with coaching. Dave Canales comes in, turns Bryce Young into into a serviceable quarterback, along with Will Harriger, the quarterback's coach. The coaching is absent with the Jets. They got rid of Salah, and they've been miserable ever since. And it's going to be another turnover in the Jets. They'll get hyped up again in the offseason. They'll get a couple of big free agent splashes. Rodgers will probably walk away. But the issues with the Jets right now are on defense and with culture and with leaders. And until they fix that, they're just going to keep stumbling into, losing seasons and missing the playoffs.
All right, we're going to close out this segment on tonight's show with our own teams. And now I'll kick off yourself. I know you were leaving the watch party to go home and watch the Bears game, and you kind of stressed, please don't text me because I want to watch the game in full without knowing the score. And imagine by the time we hit halftime, you probably wanted to turn it off. But this team went in against the 49ers team, and you rightly called it out in terms of were banged up and serious list of injuries. And yet they came out sharp and got an early lead, and there was just no way back for the Bears. The Bears just looked a shell of themselves in terms of what we saw earlier on in the season. And we're all talking about teams tanking, not necessarily tanking is the right word, but teams who are struggling, Jets, Giants, and all the various other teams with little victories. And it doesn't feel like the Bears are a 4-win team right now, but you're kind of looking at this stage of the season with 4 games to go around What are they going to do for the rest of the season? Are they going to come out and continue to try win these games? Because yesterday was probably the flattest performance we've seen for quite some time. Bearing in mind what's gone on with the head coach, you would have thought to be a reaction to Eberflus getting fired. And it wasn't the case at all. It just looked like a very flattened team. It looked like a disinterested team.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big surprise was the defense just weren't at the races at all. They did not look like they wanted to be there. They didn't look like they done too much. Then the offense done what the offense has done all season. It started so slow and so embarrassing in the first half. I mean, at halftime, the 49ers had 319 yards of offense and the Bears had 4. That's not 40, that's 4 yards of offense. I don't even know how that's possible. You know, it's just something. I think this team they're done now. I don't see them doing anything between now and the end of the season. I mean, their run in is tough. They got the Vikings, the Lions, the Seahawks, and the Packers. I mean, you'd be a brave man to bet against any of those teams and to give a Bears the win. So I don't know what they do from here on now. I think the Thomas Brown for head coach talk and stop, because before he'd even managed the game as the head coach, people were saying he needed to get a job, and I never understood that. I mean, they need to really push the boat out now and go all out to try and get a top head coach, because I do believe they have the players there. But there's just something about this Bears franchise that it's just not right, and they just cannot get out of their own way. In terms of the 49ers, look, I said earlier on, I wouldn't be doing cartwheels about this win. I'd be happy if I'm a 49ers fan. They obviously need the win. As we say, the business end of the season. They'll still say they're only 2 games out in their division. You know, they've lost to a few of those teams, so they may not have the head-to-head, but they'll still think, you know, they can go win games, which will be tough for them as well. But why wouldn't you? You're 2 games out with 4 games to go. You've got to have that hope. I mean, Purdy came in, he played well yesterday. You know, it's hard to see them do it, but still, they need to tell themselves they can. But they were just a lot better than a Bears team that looked like they're already on the beach. And I genuinely feel this Bears team could lose this next 4, end up with, I think, 10 or 11 losses on the trot. And then it's going to be a very interesting question when it comes to GM Ryan Poles, because he will have overseen another season with a 10 or more losing streak, which, you know, in a season where there was so much expected and people were saying 9, 10, 11 wins, that can't happen. So Bears' point of view, it's going to be interesting to see how they react to this and what they do. And 49ers' point of view, good win. You need a win at this stage of the season. They put up the points. They done what they needed to do. But we're going to see now, was that just because they played the Bears, or are they maybe somehow turning the corner and maybe doing it in crunch time of the season?
Kieran, in 1978, the Giants fans flew a airplane over Giant Stadium. With 15 years of lousy football, we've had enough sorted out. Well, it wasn't that necessarily on the banner yesterday, but it wasn't far off. You know, the same kind of situation. Well, we're 12 years removed now from when the Giants last won a Super Bowl in 2012. They sacked Tom Coughlin after a 6-win season, 2-time Super Bowl champion. And ever since that day, this team and this organization has gone to the dogs. We've had 2 playoff seasons. Fourth one was bought essentially through free agency. A couple of years ago was an anomaly, we'll say. Yesterday, I mean, what do you say? Look, they came back and found a way. Yeah, found another way yet to lose. A chip shot field goal is blocked. And the ironic thing, by all accounts, if you're reading the reports, the Giant Stadium, MetLife Stadium, the reaction was like as if they did kick a field goal, because the fans did not want the game to go to overtime. They didn't want to win, because we didn't want a situation like we were last year, where they had 3 wins in November last year. They meant nothing. And then they lost the opportunity to draft a quarterback. I know you're reluctant to kind of put these quarterbacks this year in the same level as what we've seen this year, but the reality is, if the Giants are picking top two, they are going to take a quarterback. And then today you've got Pat Leonard and Jordan, and they're all kind of pushing the same narrative. When are these guys going to be removed from their jobs? They're talking about them even going before the end of the season. I don't think that's the reality. We're wondering whether they're going to come back. Never mind getting fired during the season. Your thoughts on yesterday and where we go from here?
Well, I mean, like I told you last night of the instant reaction, I wouldn't be surprised if at any time the decision came down. I mean, they're one more absolute hammering from Maurer, just saying, all right, I've seen enough. I mean, I think Vegas has the Ravens minus 35. I'm just kidding. That's not true. But, you know, that's how
it's 14. It's 14, a home team for 14.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's as bad as it's ever been. I mean, I'm actually reminiscing over the good days of Shermer and Joe Judge. You know, bring back Jim Fossil. I mean, what a coach he was. I mean, it's year after year of terrible football, the way they handled it. I mean, like you said, it all started with the way they handled Coughlin. They fumbled how to replace Eli. and it's just been band-aid on cut ever since. It's an absolute mess of an organization right now. And Mara, I mean, you saw in the Hard Knocks, there's a lot of Mara family members and friends and close people to his circle, and he's going to have some really tough decisions. He's going to have people in his ears saying, "You got to clean house." He's going to try to be loyal to those people, but until he just relinquishes that kind of responsibility and finds a strong-minded GM that can come in. Joe Shane came in with fireworks and rockets and proclaimed himself to be the next coming, but he's been very underwhelming. The way that they've been run the last couple of years, the worst thing I've said before, the worst thing that could have happened was the Giants made the playoffs in 22, because it's been downhill ever since. I mean, it has to be a new GM. It has to be a new head coach. At this stage, we can talk in the past all we want. Drake May was the guy the Giants wanted. We saw that in Hard Knocks. He's the guy I wanted. I thought he was the best quarterback coming out of college last year. There are some serviceable quarterbacks out there, not exactly, but I mean, look what Bo Nix did. You surround him with good coaching, you get a couple of good draft picks, you get some smart free agency signings, which is something the Giants haven't done lately and very well, especially the draft picks. But I think ultimately what's going to be the undoing of Shane is going to be the draft picks. I think he's whiffed on too many, which has left a kind of fragile kind of base for this team. And it's not when you lose somebody like Andrew Thomas on the left tackle side, that the rest of the team just folds. There's not enough solidity there to keep the team going. There's no leaders. You got a absolute superstar stud in Malik Neighbors, who's been wasted out there. And the longer it goes on, the more upset he's going to be. This is a player who needs to get the ball early and often in a game to showcase his talents and win games. It's either going to be Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders. I'm not sure about that with the whole Dion thing. That's really it. I mean, we've been watching college football this weekend. The top teams don't have great quarterbacks, and it's by all consensus, it's a down year for quarterbacks. So we'll see. It's top to bottom at this stage with the Giants. There's no easy fix. How Maurer approaches this is going to be the key. How he sees it happening, but if they get, I mean, the scenario is if they get absolutely blown out the water by the Ravens and the Ravens just dance all over them in the fourth quarter, I mean, who's to say that that's going to be enough for Maurer? Because that stadium was half empty at kickoff yesterday, and it didn't get any fuller. So it was quarter empty by the time the game was over. I mean, I will never root for the Giants to lose. I've been a fan for 38 years. I will never root despite draft picks and what positions we're going to get. But to see fans in the stadium cheer for a missed field goal, I mean, that's just – I mean, this is a stadium where this is a team that had Lawrence Taylor, Mark Bavaro, Gary Reasons, Phil Simms, legends of the game, Y.A. Tittle going all the way back. And now you have fans cheering for a missed field goal. If that doesn't wake Maurer up to what's going on, I don't know what will. Dire times in East Rutherford.
Yeah, you touched on it there. You're talking about draft, and potentially that's the reason Joe Shane loses his job. There's also, you touched on it, leaders. There's no leaders because he let all the leaders essentially walk in free agency over the course of the 2 years. And some underrated players that have been playing really well. I saw a piece today around Robinson playing really lights out for the Panthers defensive line. He had a great season with Dexter last year. Again, another one that was allowed to walk. So many mismanagement of situations, and only intensified by the fact that we got to see it all on Hard Knocks last offseason. And as much as we enjoyed it, I wonder will any other team will sign up to Hard Knocks, bearing in mind the scrutiny which the Giants have had over the course of the season. That concludes our Week 14 recap. We will be back on Thursday as we look forward to Week 15. No teams on bye weeks, huge amount of games to look forward to. But for now, that is our Monday night recap.